Chapter 15 St. Giles's Fair. Adam rode all the way to Winchester with Duane William. The first day after the robbery and the rescue they glowed with affection for each other. Duane William said over and over that Adam was a fine, brave lad who had saved him money and time and trouble and perhaps his life. He said he hoped that his own son would grow into just such a boy and that he was going to do great things for Adam. Adam thought Duane William was a very prince of merchants, who was going to find Roger and Nick and give him a new surcoat of silk from Italy and some pennies to jingle in his purse. He was glad and proud that he had been able to help Duane William out of his troubles. He felt considerably bigger than usual, and he waggled his head as he rode along, planning and sometimes saying out loud just how he would describe the robbers to Roger. The second day, however, as they made their way down the valley of the Itchen River, along roads increasingly crowded with people going to the fair, they both suffered a slight reaction. Duane William's mind was on the fair and the difficulties of managing without his partner. He fretted over the dangers and expenses of a merchant's life, and the small profit that he got for all his trouble. Adam talked about how he had tripped up the robber and hidden in the tree, how he had insisted on seeing Sir Adam Gurdon, until, with his keen sense of audience, he suddenly perceived that Duane William and the servants were all thoroughly weary of his theme. He realized that Roger would say he had been bragging. Suddenly he felt very much smaller than usual, and hollow. It came rushing over him that he had lost Nick, that he did not know where Roger was, and that Winchester was a big city. In silence they passed the great stone buildings of Hyde Abbey and entered Winchester by the north gate. Within the city walls was a great mass of streets and buildings, crowded and noisy and confusing. Duane William went straight to the largest inn on Cheap Street, not far from the castle and the west gate. They found the inn jammed with merchants, and the innkeeper dashing about distractedly, with a saucepan in his hand, and his forehead shiny with perspiration. "It's very late in the day, sir, and we're all filled up," he exclaimed. "There's one place left in a bed with two others. Very quiet gentlemen they are too, sir. That's the best I can do for you. I haven't a corner for the boy." The servants were easily disposed of, for they would have to sit up all night and guard the packs of goods. But where was Adam to sleep? Duane William looked at him in perplexity for a long moment, and then his face suddenly cleared. "I've got it, lad," he said. "You'll have your supper here with me, and then you'd best go to the strangers' hall. The good monks of St. Swithin's built it to lodge poor pilgrims, and they won't question a young lad too closely. You can sleep snugly there tonight, and perhaps you might even find your father there. In fact, I think it quite likely you will. It's one of the first places to look. But if you don't find him, then you can come to me tomorrow, and I'll see what I can do. Now, that's all settled. Let's have something to eat." Duane William ordered for Adam just what he was having for himself, and he always had the best. They had a fat partridge apiece, and mutton with a savory sauce, besides pears and gingerbread to finish with. They ate silently, and both felt better when they had finished. Duane William patted Adam affectionately on the shoulder and put some pennies in his hand. "Be sure you come to see me tomorrow on Giles's Hill in the street of Dover, and tell me how you get on. Go now, before curfew rings, and sleep well." It was important to be within doors after curfew rang. Strangers in a town were liable to be arrested on suspicion, and then, even though they were innocent of anything but being abroad after curfew, they had to stay in jail till the justices of jail delivery came to the town and heard their case. Sometimes it was 6 months before they were freed. Adam thanked the merchant hastily and took leave of him. Cheap Street on the eve of St. Giles's Fair was thronged so thick that even a slender boy like Adam had difficulty in squeezing his way through. He had no trouble in finding the strangers' hall, for everyone knew the way to the hall at the convent gate, where the monks gave food and shelter to the poor ones among the pilgrims who came to visit the shrine of St. Swithin. Adam found the big door standing open and walked in. A lay brother was dozing in a chair near the entrance. Adam hesitated, not sure whether he ought to wake him up and ask if he might spend the night. But the poor man looked tired, and so Adam just slipped quietly past him and went on into the long room walled with rough stone and roofed with great oak beams. Over the fire in the center, a few pilgrims were still cooking their evening meal, but most of them had already made beds for themselves on the benches along the sides of the room and had gone to sleep, their faces dim and tired in the twilight. Adam went from one to another in the big, shadowy, rustling hall looking for Roger or for Jenkin. Some did not even know he had passed, and some hunched a shoulder and rolled over impatiently. But one man in a group talking quietly under a window called out softly to him. "Well, sonny," he said, looking for someone. "Yes, sir, I've lost my father. He's Roger the minstrel." The man smiled and shook his head. "We're all poor men here," he said. "We've got no pennies for songs and tales. The place to look for minstrels is at the inns." The inns? Adam had just been in the largest inn of all. He should have searched it upstairs and down, he thought despairingly. How was he ever going to find Roger if he didn't keep his wits about him any better than that? A red-bearded man with a wide gap in his front teeth scooped up some rushes and spread his cloak over them. "Giles's Hill is where you'll find the minstrels," he said in a deep, booming voice. "Minstrels and jugglers and tumblers and all such. You'll find them in the morning. Sleep here, why don't you? It won't be so lonely." Comforted by his friendliness, Adam curled up on the man's cloak with his wallet under his head and his harp beside him. The talk went on. Some of it he heard and some he didn't. They were countrymen from over Salisbury way. Adam gathered all but his gap-toothed friend, who seemed to be a sailor. They were talking about King Edward. "He loves his people, Longshanks does," said one. "And loves England. He's a good man. He's fiery in his temper, they say, but kind in his heart." "I was on the Magdalen that brought the king home from France in '89, said the one Adam thought of as his friend. "And I know him as you can't know him just seeing him ride by in a procession. There's nothing in this world he fears but injustice. Knows ships and knows good seamanship. Loves a joke. Stammers a bit when he speaks too, just like you or I might do." "He dresses like a plain man," put in another. "That's what I like, not all silks and embroideries and cloth of gold." "Got all his teeth too," added the sailor, who had lost his, and the others laughed. "He hasn't been the same since the Queen died," said the first one. He loved her." Adam sat up. "I've seen the crosses he put up for her," he said, "wherever the casket rested on the way from York to London. There's one in St. Albans, and one between London and Westminster." He had often passed by the one at St. Albans without paying attention. He thought he understood a little better how the king felt, now that he had lost Roger and Nick and had to go on without them, and that was only for a little while. "He's a great king, Longshanks," repeated the sailor. "He's strong for the law. Remember that, young fellow. He stands by the laws, and he doesn't make them all himself either." "Who does then?" said Adam, a little indignantly. He thought that was what the king was for. "Parliament. There's been Parliament sitting in Winchester Castle right up the street a bit, making laws that hold the king just like they hold you and me." A man leaning against the wall clapped his feet together impatiently and growled, "Parliament? Who goes to Parliament? The big churchmen and the nobles. Might as well be the king making the laws. Do the common people go? They do not." "Ah, go on. Parliaments aren't for common people. How would they get away from their work to go to Parliament?" "Work? That's it. Common people work to get the money that keeps the king and the nobles and the church too. Ever the fourth penny goes to the king, just like the song says." Adam was not interested in parliaments. He hoped some day he would see the king and Prince Edward of Carnarvon, who was just his own age. He lay down again and closed his eyes, and the voices merged into each other and faded away. The next morning the pilgrims went to the shrine in the cathedral and then to the prior's lodging to get food and alms for their journey home. Adam returned instead to Cheap Street, from which he set out briskly for St. Giles's Hill and the fair. He went through the east gate, past the city mill, crossed over the river by the city bridge, and followed the crowd up the hill to the fair. Giles's fair was the greatest one in England. Some said the greatest fair in all Europe, and it seemed this bright September morning that all England and half of Europe had come to it. He heard northern voices and midland voices and southern voices. He heard Welshmen speak. He heard Norman French and French from France. He heard tongues he had never heard before. The fair belonged to the Bishop of Winchester. Everybody who had a booth on Giles's Hill had to pay a tax to him, and while the fair lasted, all the shops in all the towns for 20 miles around must be closed. The bishop's officers went about and tested all the weights and measures to make sure that they were true. They tasted the wine and the bread that were to be sold there and threw out whatever was not of good quality. They set up a special court right in the fair to settle any disputes that might arise, and what with all the merchants, English and foreign, and all the people who came to buy, plenty of disputes did rise. It was called the Court of the Dusty Feet, because people had come to the fair over the roads from north and east and west, and their feet were indeed dusty and weary too. All of Giles's Hill was laid out in streets, each one lined with booths and tents. Every trade had its street, and every town. There were the street of the ironmongers, and the street of the leather workers, the street of the Welshmen, and the street of the Flemings. Everywhere was bustle and confusion and gaiety. Up and down the streets pushed the shoppers, some intent on buying needed supplies, some just cooking. Wherever two streets met, or wherever there was an open space, the entertainers flocked. Minstrels, jugglers, tumblers, mummers, some wore masks, some had animals' heads on their shoulders, some led monkeys or dogs by a leash. One had a small dusty bear that did a few clumsy dance steps. Adam had never seen so many people or heard so much noise. He pushed through the crowd looking always for a tall man with deep-set blue eyes, looking for a red spaniel with long silky ears and a busy tail. The shouts of people beat about his head. "Here you are, folks, needles and pins. Take home a needle to your wife, and let her mend your clothes for you. Buy a pin and fix them yourself to last till you get home. Needles and pins. You over there with the red hair and the torn coat, you need some of what I've got. Ginger, figs, raisins, almonds, comfits for a sweet tooth. Take a faring to your sweeting. Belts, passes, gloves. Gather round, lordings, and hear the tale of the fox and the wolf." There were hundreds of people, there were thousands of people, but no Roger. When he got hungry, Adam bought himself bread and cheese and a cup of ale, and ate them looking down at Winchester. The city lay within its walls, with the King's Castle and Wolvesey Castle, where the bishop lived, and 100 church spires riding high above the acres of roofs. It looked enormous. Suppose he could not find Roger. Suppose Nick was lost to him forever. Like ice forming in sudden swift splinters over a puddle, fear jabbed Adam's heart. He sought out the street of Dover and found Dwayne William in his booth, which was a substantial one with mud walls and a thatched roof. He and his men were busy unpacking his silks and spices and displaying them on counter and shelves. The whole place smelled excitingly of cinnamon and sandalwood and new fabrics. "Oh, it's you," said Dwayne William. "What luck?" "None," said Adam. "Yet. It may take you several days. I'll tell you what. You can sleep here in the booth at night, with Oswald and Harry. They're here to guard the stuff, and there's plenty of room for you. Run away now, because I'm busy, but be sure you come back later." It made Adam feel better to have a place to return to at night. The stranger's hall was all right, but the fleas had been bad. During the next few days he searched everywhere, up and down the streets of the fair, back and forth between Giles's Hill and Winchester. He talked to everybody who had time for him, and told them all about his search. One day when he was eating his dinner of bean pottage at one of the cook shops that had been set up at the fair, he got into conversation with a palmer. He knew the man was a palmer because he had medals all over his coat and cap showing the shrines to which he had made pilgrimages. He even had the palm of the Holy Land on his shoulder. "I see you've been to St. Albans," said Adam, to start things going, "and Canterbury, and Walsingham. What's the next one to it?"
"St. Peter's in Rome," said the palmer in a hushed voice, "and here you see I have the shell of St. James and the head of St. John the Baptist from Amiens."
Suddenly, to Adam's astonishment, he took off his cap and kissed the scallop shell sewn there.
"It was at St. James that a miracle was wrought for me," he explained. "My lame leg was cured, see?" He jumped up from the bench and kicked out first with one leg and then the other, to show how limber he was.
"Does St. Swithin work miracles at his shrine?" asked Adam thoughtfully, "except to make it rain for 40 days?
"Sick people have been cured there. It's said that the first tower of the church fell down when wicked William Rufus was buried beneath it. That's not strictly a miracle, but it shows there is power in the place."
"Could I get a miracle if I went to the shrine?"
The palmer turned to look at Adam, his eyes twinkling. "Well now, I don't know," he said. "After all, you didn't come here to make a pilgrimage, did you? And that's what influences the saints. The farther you go and the harder the way, the greater the merit." "That's only natural, but still, it wouldn't do any harm to try." When another day came and went with no sight and no news of Roger or Nick, Adam decided to try for a miracle. So he joined a group of pilgrims entering the cathedral by the round arched door in the north transept, which was the only door the pilgrims were permitted to use. The monks of St. Swithin's looked on the pilgrims who came to the shrine as noisy, pushing, untidy people, greedy for too easily earned merit, who cluttered up their beautiful church. They made them go from the north door straight to the shrine behind the high altar, and they set up elaborate wrought iron gates to keep them out of the rest of the church. The shrine of St. Swithin was all gold and jewels. After Adam had put some of his silver pennies in the basin, he went and knelt down before the shrine among the other pilgrims. His heart beat fast. He said his Pater Noster and Confiteor, as he had been taught at St. Albans, and then he sketched out for the saint the miracle he wanted. He had no lame leg to straighten. He did not want to be suddenly clothed in fine raiment. He did not want to be cleansed of his sins or relieved several centuries of purgatory. What he wanted was to see Roger come striding through the crowd with Nick under his arm. Gentle St. Swithin, who taught King Alfred when he was a little boy and loved him well, surely this would be an easy and pleasant miracle for you to work. Adam opened his eyes wide and looked for Roger. All he saw was the other pilgrims and the wrought iron gates, and beyond them the long pillared aisles touched with color by the sunlight, streaming through painted glass windows.